Shabbat Shalom. Tonight is Shabbat Shemot, the Shabbat of names, referring to the first verse of the book of Exodus, which we begin reading this week. Human beings with their names make up almost the entirety of Torah. With the exception of the first verses of Genesis, Torah is the story of God's relationship with a particular group of humans, the Jewish people. Many generations of our people. There are two places in Torah where this is especially evident. The first is in the book of Genesis in chapter 5. This is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created humankind, God made them in the likeness of God. They were created male and female, and God blessed them. And God named them humankind when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. After he became the father of Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Seth lived a total of 912 years, and then he died. And on, for 10 generations in 3 different lines over many, many hundreds of years, spanning from Adam to Noah, the names continue. Another place where Shemot names are evident is, as I said, at the opening of the book of Exodus. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died. But the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. The story of the Israelites, which you'll notice after the death of Joseph, they were extremely blessed by God's measure. They were fruitful and they multiplied. But eventually, their story in Egypt takes a difficult turn. While they were prosperous during the time of Joseph and the initial generations that followed, they began to fall under the oppression of Pharaoh until Moses is born, rescued from infanticide and raised in privilege. The stage is set for the redemption of the Israelites. In the 3rd chapter of Exodus, we see Moses' introduction to God with a supernatural flourish that sets the tone for the remainder of the book. Moses is quite literally minding his own business, tending Yitro's flock, when he is presented with a bush that is aflame and call by God to Moses to get his attention. And it is profoundly effective as Moses marvels at the sight of this burning bush. But his trepidation causes him to turn away. Perhaps he was considering escape. Clearly, a greater intervention by God was required in order to engage Moses. God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he answered, "Here I am." And he said, God said, "Do not come closer. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground." "I am," he said, "the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So then God gives Moses a commission to free the Israelites from their enslavement in Egypt. And as Moses begins to consider the role God has commanded him to play, he wants to know more. He's likely curious and also wants to be confident that his charge comes from a worthy source. Moses doesn't even know God's name. So Moses asks God to identify God's self. The answer, Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. Now that's not translated in the standard English version of the Torah, which leaves us, the English-speaking reader, to ponder its meaning. Now the King James Bible does translate this Hebrew phrase, and it translates it as, I am that I am. And many other English Bibles use a similar translation, I am who I am. However, the grammatical construction of the Hebrew in this name, as it is uttered by God, is clearly in the future tense. So God declares God's name in the present tense of Moses, with Moses in real time, yet it's in the future tense. What do we make of this dilemma of time and of being? A contemporary teacher who I greatly respect, Rabbi Bradley Artson, he suggests a possibility. Artson's view is that God's potential is open and is informed by God's intersection, God's interaction with creation and with human beings. When God defines God's self as a God of becoming, God is calling Moses to become a part of this process of creation and the correction of the enslavement of the Israelites. God is calling Moses to do this with God. Our covenant with God is certainly a holy relationship, but in this text, God shows Moses that it is also a way of being. Covenant is the joining of human hineni, here I am, to divine ehyeh, I am becoming. And this joining is rooted in God's name, in God's Shem. And tonight, our community is blessed by sharing the Copeland family simcha of Meir receiving her name and joining our people. And Maya, you bless us tonight by being a beautiful and tangible reminder of becoming. You are a holy example of the potential embodied by each one of us human beings, inside of us, by God, in God's creation. Maya, the name your parents have given you means a spring of flowing water. Your name symbolizes the process of flowing, of moving, and of becoming. And by acting as a witness to Maya's naming her becoming this evening, each of us is given the opportunity to consider our own becoming. How will we be what we will be? How does the world we live influence us and inspire us to make the most of this beautiful, singular life that we have been given? How will each of our names, our Shemot, show the world who we are? How will our names be remembered when we are gone? Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. We are each becoming in God's image. Shabbat Shalom.